What is the wildest thing you've ever seen happen at a work Christmas party? Me? I'm the wildest thing that ever happened at a company holiday party. I worked the closing shift, so I arrived later after all the food and drinks were done, stone cold sober. I hit the dance floor and soon broke a sweat. I wore a silicone prosthetic in my left cup due to Poland syndrome. I glanced down and noticed it was no longer in place and had slid out under my dress and disappeared onto the crowded dance floor. I swiftly pulled a ninja exit and slipped out of the party. Next business day, coworkers were talking about the dance floor turning into a slip and slide for some unknown reason, wreaking havoc at the party. No one was seriously injured, but that's my confession for today. Story 2. I worked at a company in Scotland a few years ago, and every year something unexpected happened at them. The most mental incident I remember was, one year, a woman in her mid-20s hit the free bar before the meal and got really intoxicated really quickly. She started mouthing off to people sitting on her table and swearing at anyone she looked at. Eventually, a director of the company came over and asked her to leave. Instead, she took her shoe off and attacked him with a stiletto heel. She was restrained, the police were called, and she spent the night in jail. What made the situation even more crazy was it was only her third day at the company. She started on Monday and the party was on Wednesday. Safe to say she was fired. I'm not sure if she was charged. Well, I doubt they charged her. It was a free bar. Story 3. One of our managers was so incensed that only for the first 4 hours was booze covered by the corporate tab. Beer and wine was covered for the whole party, but this Christmas event was for a brewery. The manager was all, I don't want free beer, I want booze. Decided that his best move was to load up on booze in the 1 hour. Double shot after double shot as some form of protest. The protest being that the rule promoted dangerous drinking behavior. He got carted out about 15 minutes after the hour was up, around 7 p.m. The manager was me. Story 4. Huge company, global, you've heard of it, offices in every country basically. Our state had a company Christmas party for the employees in the entire state, and everyone from the grunts to the top leaders showed up. One guy and his date were at a table full of just barely above interns, and the date was trying to convince the guy to hit the dance floor. She kept assuring him the dance floor was too big for anyone to notice him. He kept saying he was a terrible and embarrassing dancer. She assured him she'd love him no matter how bad he danced and nobody would make fun of him. All the table agreed and kept chanting, Dance Jackson, Dance Jackson, while his friends hooted that he must be really terrible if he was fighting this hard. Night goes on, and after a few hours, he finally joins his date on the dance floor. The CEO quietly walks behind them and as he's walking by says, Damn, Jackson, you really can't dance. Never even broke his stride. Anyways, turned out well for Jackson because the CEO learned his name from that and watched his work, liked what he saw, and over the next few years, he ended up getting promoted to mid-level before being poached by another company and now is upper management. And he did actually really suck at dancing too. Story 5. Mine was how a coworker at Walmart, when I worked there in college, made a huge deal all month that her secret Santa better give her something amazing or there would be a problem. Like nonstop, y'all better give me something good, people who give bad presents aren't the worst. Come the Christmas lunch, and she did like her present, decent quality headphones, but didn't give anything to her person. Like, she didn't even forget. She said she doesn't think she has to give to get. You're an adult, buy what you want. When we obviously called her out on it, she stormed through the store, tearing down decorations and making a mess. Our boss went and bought the person who got nothing $50 on one of those gift cards that you can use like a regular card. Our boss actually sucked, but even he thought that was cold. It was dramatic and stupid, but nothing nearly as bad as the stories here. Though, to be fair, we had no alcohol. Story 6. My wife works for a small company, boutique clientele with a stellar reputation. At the very last Christmas party, I was part of an incident. The owner's daughter, an accomplished bride and attractive woman, got into a heated argument with her soon-to-be ex-husband regarding her affair with the top salesman who was standing at the bar. Now, there were about 250 people in attendance, a live band, and an open bar. Great food, too. The argument moved outside, salesman, daughter, husband, and a few other people. A few minutes later, the owner asked me to come outside, maybe to help stop a fight. I did that and thought it was over. Nope, the party got going again, really going. My wife and I were on the dance floor with maybe 50 other people. The owner's married, affair-having daughter was also on the floor several drinks later. We're all friends and she was dancing with us, between us, but also against us. It got weird, fast. Then the lights came up mid-song as Daddy took the mic and there was his smart, attractive, accomplished, affair-having daughter dancing against me while grabbing her own melons facing my wife who was having a great time. That was the last company Christmas party and the daughter is now in charge and doing great. Story 7. I once worked for a large third-party logistics company. The culture was already very bro-tastic, but the Christmas parties were very Wolf of Wall Street. Imagine a room full of geared-up, coked-out, new money alpha bros with soap opera-level drama and stunted emotional IQ. I did not miss the toxic atmosphere full of men screaming at each other. and Jerry Springer-style fights between affair partners and spouses. And yes, at one point it was clear that the company hired local street workers as actual employees like in HR and stuff to enhance the culture of the company. They would be eye candy for the sales team and supply and teams with whatever could help them be productive 24/7, 365. Everybody knew what was going on, but you just don't advertise it. We were encouraged to send in pics from the event. It was a formal cocktail party. There was a professional photographer and videographer as well. These photos would end up in our digital newsletter, up on the TV in our lobby, and in the company's recruiting material. The idea was to show attractive, successful-looking people having fun in group photos, something cute and aspirational, very quote-unquote work hard, play hard. So many absolute boneheads sent in photos that you should never show your boss, getting wrecked and messy, flipping off the camera, making out. Story 8. I've posted this story here before, but it's a good one. So one year, my law firm hired 3 identical article clerks, basically lawyer interns in their final year of law school. They were all about the same height and build, straight brown hair with bangs, black frame glasses. Nobody could tell them apart. For the entire year, they were articling with us, even the lawyers that worked directly with. So at the party, they all wore very similar dresses. One or more of them got super messed up and screamed at the senior partner about what a schmuck he is, then, or was it one of the others, try to get everyone to do substances in the bathroom with her. Then when HR escorted her, or was it her, to a cab to get her home, she got in a fight with the cab driver, who then refused to drive her, and HR had to wait with her for another cab. The next 2 weeks, we had so many meetings about it. They did countless interviews with everyone at the party trying to figure out who, singular, plural, it was. But in the end, they couldn't say for sure, because it wouldn't be fair to punish everyone over the actions of 1 or 2 or 3. Nothing was ever done. Eventually, 2 of them were hired on as lawyers after they passed the bar, and 1 recently made partner. If anyone knows who it really was, the rumor mill is still totally silent. Story 9. Open bar, so everybody was hammered. One woman, recently divorced, was taking on all corners in the venue's toilets. The sales exec had white powder all under her nose and stopped even bothering to go to the bathroom to do substances, was cutting it up on the table in the middle of the party. The boss's wife was in a smaller room, but by no means private or empty, getting it on with a 20-year-old intern. The boss was in another room with a young secretary, getting up to much the same. Eventually, the boss stumbled upon his wife, and they had a stand-up screaming match while the intern zipped up and slunk off. Several people smoking cigars in a room and refusing to take them outside. They somehow managed to set the curtains on fire. More than one person passed out, including a lady who was found by the cleaners the next day asleep behind a couch. The venue staff just gave up after a while, especially as a long-termer explained that this was pretty much par for the course, and the only reason we'd booked the venue was because our company was banned from pretty much everywhere else. The bit that stands out, though, is the middle-aged nerdy accountant type who chucked a wobbly about 3 in the morning when the staff locked the bars down and refused to serve any more booze. He got so angry that he jumped up on a table, dropped his trousers, and had a huge crap. The table overbalanced halfway through, and he struggled to get back up because his trousers were knotted around his ankles. Most people were gone or passed out at this point, but those of us left just watched and cheered him on. The staff were shouting at him, but none of them would go near him because of the crap everywhere. While the staff were busy with that, some of us managed to get back into the locked bar and stole a lot of bottles of spirits, beer, and random bottles of stuff in a big plastic tub and got it into one of the bedrooms where the party continued. 2 weeks later, everybody back at work. No one ever mentioned it again until next December, when it was fondly remembered as the year to beat. Good times, folks. Good times. Story 10. Intoxicated coworker, older guy, steps backwards to get out of the way of a dude carrying a tray of drinks, trips over a table leg, crashes backwards into one of those crappy 80s cubicle movable walls, and the entire 12 or 14 string of wall all comes crashing down with a massive bang. Tables go over, punch bowls hit the floor, glass breaks, dust in the air, food all over the floor, everything stops. And that's when we all saw that our 60-plus-year-old boss had a 21-year-old intern bent over a desk behind the wall, railing her for all he was worth. Everybody freezes for a bit, then the boss starts grabbing at his ankles, trying to get his britches up. The next thing we heard was the old guy who took the wall out. I'm all right. Hell, we'd all forgotten about him. Best Christmas party ever. I miss the 80s. Story 11. When I was working at a smallish law firm, the Christmas party was pretty good. Nothing too wild, just 2 of the associates, both married to other people, who everyone knew had a thing for each other, fooling around in a bathroom. After the party, though, some of us decided to go to a nightclub. One of the firm's 2 partners dropped her purse in front of the nightclub bouncer, though, and when she was unable to pick it up, we were all denied entry. Incidentally, that partner ended up having a child with the other partner some years later, and the other partner's subsequent divorce proceeding went to the Supreme Court of our country. Story 12. Was it my work? I was set up in Seattle doing some work on a Friday to Monday gig. Set some crap up Friday, came back Monday and make sure everything works and fly home. And a friend of mine was living up there, so on the weekend we would go out to various bars. On Saturday night, it was me, her, and her roommate, and we wanted to hit up this place called Tap House Grill, but as we walked in, it appeared to be closed for a private event. There was a table with some badges, but it was unmanned. Some kind of Christmas party, apparently, and we were a little late. So we grabbed some unmarked badges, wrote our first names on them, and walked down the stairs, found out that it was a totally open bar, and there were appetizers and everything. It turned out it was a Microsoft party. Good news, I happen to be an IT engineer specializing in Microsoft software, certified in everything. So I ordered a Ciroc Martini, and when people started talking to us, I just told them I was from the LA office. Talk the talk, we were there for several hours and no one suspected a thing. I told the girls to just say they were in accounting or HR or something. Even had one Indian fellow take our picture. He wanted one with the girls and gave me his internal messaging address to send it to him. Poor schmuck never got that pic, lol. We absolutely destroyed those nerds on the pool table. Awesome night. Didn't spend a dime except for the $20 I gave the bartender. Story 13. I was a bouncer off and on for about 20 years. I worked in a military town and was oftentimes fighting 3 or 4 times a night. I am a doorman of experience. Yeah, I've had numerous conversations where quote-unquote normal people could not believe the amount of aggro we would get on a single night. That being said, the worst single night of my life was when I did an old maid a favor and worked a corporate Christmas party for him as he was short-staffed. It was a 4-hour running battle where there was about 10 police cars and vans turned up. The old Bill ran out of handcuffs. And I cannot stress this enough. It was all because about 20 absolute schmucks from PC World got up and kicked off with a load of builders and scaffolders on their Christmas party who were all spread out through the venue. I think the first fight was about 8 p.m. In the end, the coppers just pepper sprayed anything that wouldn't lie down. Story 14. I lived out of the country at the time and decided to surprise my parents by coming home. I get to the house and they aren't there, so I call. They say they are at a company Christmas party and tell me they are at location, locally famous restaurant. I show up and a woman recognizes me as I'm trying to talk myself in. I surprise my parents and it's a fun time for all. I find the lady that got me in and thank her. We start chatting and honestly kind of hit it off. She mentions that she was promoted recently and just calls it a step up in management when I ask what she was doing there. Well, anyway, she starts talking about how she really needs to de-stress, but dating is tough at her age. She misses being wild and carefree. I take the hint and say we should bounce. We never made it out of the parking lot. I did not know when the party ended, but it turns out it was around the time she and I were getting out of the back seat of my car. She was the new CFO and I was the much younger son of the HR director. He'd been there 20 plus years. Everyone knew who I was. Oops. Story 15. I once had the pleasure of watching the intoxicated CEO of a major company that you've probably heard of throw another man who was crashing their corporate Christmas party into a door frame and knock him unconscious. I was with 2 police officers at the time who had actually previously warned said party crasher against being a nuisance earlier in the night. The 3 of us didn't see anything at all. We did, however, haul off the nuisance away from the party. Years later, I was in another job and I had to go guarantee some flowers that had passed. I rang the doorbell on the house to let the homeowner know I had the flowers and the CEO opened the door. I froze for a second and went, "Hey, I know you. You're this person. I saw you knock a dude out at your corporate Christmas party in 2013. And he just started laughing his butt off and went, "I don't remember that, but that sounds like me. Pleasant dude. Tipped me $100 for the hibiscus." Story 16. This is pretty mild. One year, a local hotel had several company Christmas parties going on the same night. All of them with signs so you know which room your company was using. We had the room at the end of one hall and smokers had to go past several parties to go out and have a cigarette. One thing you need to understand, at the time, most people at work knew him as a no-nonsense kind of guy who didn't really joke around much. He was friendly, but pretty much kept to himself. My boyfriend had gotten fairly intoxicated, but so were a lot of people, and some of us were DDs for those who wanted a drink. Toward the end of the night, when the parties were starting to wind down, he excused himself to go smoke. He was gone quite a while, and I started to get concerned, thinking maybe he had fallen or passed out. I went looking for him. He wasn't anywhere outside. On the way back, I passed by one room that was having a luau theme party, complete with leis. That's when I spotted him. He was stumbling out of that party, festooned with several of those cheap plastic ones being cheered on by several members of that party in equal states of tipsy. I went up to him and his new buddy said, "Oh, this is a wonderful woman. She needs to be decorated." So I ended up also sporting some new neckwear. We get back to our party. He walks in proud as a peacock and announces loudly to the room at large, "I just got laid." Everyone just lost it. Story 17. Our company rented out a movie theater and had it show Home Alone. They made the concessions free and brought in a fully stocked bar. One employee took way too much advantage of the open bar and while sitting in the movie theater, one row in front of the CEO and other execs, started loudly talking about who he wanted to have intimacy with at the company and the dirty things he'd do to these women. The VP of sales, a married woman, pulled him outside and told him to go home. He tried to kiss her. She pushed him away and said go home again and started to walk away. That's when she saw him using the side of the church as a restroom. Once he was done, he went into our office, which was only a half block away, to grab a snack from the office kitchen. What he did instead was go to the office, go to the bathroom, see another employee who happens to be gay and grabs his butt and tries to kiss him. The other employee pushes him off, runs out, and that was the last anyone ever saw or heard from him. He didn't come into the office the next day, a Friday, and word around the office was he was fired via phone call and banned from the premises. Story 18. Some guy got hammered at our Dave and Buster's Christmas party and basically got the cops' attention because he was a bit too enthusiastic using the mallet on that strength thing, where he smashed it and tried to get it to hit the bell on top, like nearly yelling as he smashed it. So when he tried to leave, the cops said that they'd arrest him because he's obviously hammered. He said BS and made the cops call in a breathalyzer on the spot, which they did. He was pretty over the limit, and the cops said he had to wait like 4 hours to drive home. It was like 9 p.m. And this was a decade before Uber existed, so he just sat at the bar and drank water, then went home with this middle-aged man and his 25-year-old girlfriend to play poker with his friends. They dropped him off at like 2 a.m. and he went home, called off the next day. Oh, it was me, by the way, yeah. Story 19. My boss, normally a very formal woman in her 60s, brought a date to the Christmas party, and they both proceeded to get pretty intoxicated. Partway through a very nice formal dinner, Santa arrived to give out our Christmas bonus envelopes and read a speech our boss had written about how proud she was of our accomplishments. It was so nice. But during the distraction, my boss got under the table and started whistling her date. Santa noticed and started calling her a witch, which drew the attention of the entire table. Turns out, Santa was her husband, doing her a favor after the paid actor she hired failed to turn up, and her date was her quote-unquote best friend whom her husband believed was gay. I couldn't deal with the awkwardness around the office, and I wound up quitting on January 3rd. And if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 20. I worked for a private company hired by the government to work with the unemployed. Our main base of operations was the nearest welfare office. As we got along well with the regular staff, we were invited to the Christmas party, which takes place in the break room. I had some Dutch courage and wanted to go snooping around and see what the public area is like after hours in the dark. So there I am, being all sneaky like a ninja. I quietly make my way onto the floor I usually work on, and immediately am greeted by the familiar sound of someone having very passionate intimacy. I peek around the corner and there's the office witch being done over her desk by two guys. I watched for way longer than I probably should have. A while later, the three of them rejoined the party. Seeing her in a totally different light, I decided I was going to chat her up, and it was going very well, but when she made it clear we could sneak off for some fun, I had the intrusive thought they might not have used protection, so I declined but kept chatting and flirting with her. She was lovely company, nothing like how she is normally. The following Monday at work, I tried chatting with her again, but she was back to being a mega witch, so I cut my losses and avoided her after that. Story 21. I worked at a fashion company at the time, and a homeless person snuck into a big company party at a posh hotel. Almost everyone who worked there was young, so it was actually kind of fun like that. I put my purse on the table I was sitting at, and me and my work friends went to dance. My purse got stolen. The CEO of the company was an interesting guy and apparently bored with the party because when I mentioned that my purse was gone, he went on a personal mission to find it. LMAO that I did not ask for, by the way. I was just crying. Well, Monday comes around and my purse is on my boss's desk in our office. This man walks in and starts regaling this vigilante hero story where he was riding along with the cops as they tracked my phone and was with them when they busted it to get to my purse from some trap house in a bad neighborhood of the city. I was amazingly grateful because it was vintage and my mom's from when she was a teen, but I still think about his retelling of the story and wonder what actually happened. LOL. Story 22. Me? I was the wildest thing to happen at a Christmas party. I was 27 at the time and worked for a big warranty company. I had only been there for about 4 months when we all got flown to another state for a Christmas party. Fancy city, fancy hotel, etc. Anyway, when I was getting ready to go downstairs to mingle, I put my dress on and noticed I had a tear. So off I went down the street to buy something else to wear for the night. I came back, we partied into the wee hours, and when I woke up in the morning, I was in the room of a 43-year-old rep I had only met a handful of times. I had lost my hotel key, so I had to do the walk of shame to the front desk in just a robe to get a new one. As I walked down there, I passed a breakfast room where all the executives were having breakfast. I then had to fly 2 hours back home with all these people feeling absolute shame and a nasty hangover. It gets worse. Not only were my bosses unhappy that I had slept with a much older coworker, but they were convinced that when I walked down the street to buy a new dress, I was actually going there to buy substances. Safe to say, I quit not long after that. Story 23. When I was in my young 20s, I worked for a company that I am still at 15 years later. This company was known for their fun parties with open bars and dancing. A lot of my close coworkers were around my age, but the other half were in their 50s and 60s and their spouses. Our party was out of town, so our company booked us a bus. To our joyful surprise, it was a party bus equipped with poles and loud music. We were a rowdy bunch on our own, so this pole only egged us on in our intoxicated state. We had already drank quite a bit before getting on the bus, and we were all bumping and dancing all over each other. Maybe a little too much, as some of the wives forbid their husbands to get back on the bus on the way home and get rides with anyone who had room for them. We get absolutely trashed at the party and dance all night, and then we get back on the bus. A little less people than on the way there. One of my favorite coworkers had given her notice, and this was her last work function, so she decides to screw it. I'm gonna take my clothes off, and then more girls take their clothes off. The guys are taking their shirts off. There was probably a group of like 10 of us on this bus that were dancing around. I still work at this company, and the old guys I work with still bring it up to this day, and they never booked a party bus again after that. LOL. Story 24. I was at a Christmas party back in the late 80s where they hired a band, had a huge spread of food, and a couple of 6-foot tables filled with bottles of alcohol and mixers. This 20-something kid had lined up like 10 shot glasses in a row and was making B-52 shots, splashing the alcohol and ingredients as he zipped the bottles up and down the row. He was sharing these shots with the owner's son and a group of coworkers, and soon the owner's son was so blasted he slipped and fell in the middle of showing off the ring he just proposed to his fiancée with, as she watched her future husband struggle to get back up. The kid serving him the drinks helped him back to his feet, excused himself, and then headed to the dance floor. This kid starts dancing with another half-intoxicated coworker, and they're swing dancing pretty exuberantly until their hands slip on a spin out from a twirl that sends her crashing into the drum kit. This poor girl was sprawled up in the middle of the drums and mic stands, just a mess. He helps her up and makes apologies and tries to help the band put their drum kit back together, but the drummer says it's okay, they got it, and shoos him away. He goes off wandering among the crowd, talking with his coworker friends, and later, as the party is winding down, the owner announces into the microphone that everyone should grab a bottle of alcohol to take home, any food left from the buffet, and to make sure they got home safe. Most everyone is grabbing 1 or 2 bottles and plates of cookies on the way out, and this kid grabbed a couple of bottles as well, only he must have been waiting for a ride, as he was one of the last ones to leave. As everyone was saying their goodbyes and driving off, there were still a lot of bottles left, so he grabbed a couple of more and started making a nice pile outside the exit door. Then he goes back for a couple of more, seeing as how there's still a lot left on the table, and then a couple more, and then a couple more after that. I lost track of how many times he went back and forth ferrying bottles. Soon they lock up and he's standing outside waiting for his ride, who is pretty late at this point, and he's obviously embarrassed at having taken so many bottles that he has them grouped together as tightly as possible, and he's got his long black winter coat over them, trying his best to act as if A, he doesn't know who might have pilfered enough whiskey and vodka to start a neighborhood bar, and B, that he's not freezing under the snowy wind. The owner, his son, and fiancé lock up, come out to get in their car, and notice him standing there, huddled in his shirt sleeves against the building to cut the wind, and call out, asking him if he needs a ride or if they can call a cab. He politely declines, says no, he's all right, thanks, and Merry Christmas. So they ask if he's sure. He says his friend is on the way to come pick him up and he'll be okay, thanks again, he's good. They shrug and say, okay, well, good night, and then they go on their way. As soon as they pull out of the parking lot, he gets his coat on, and then suddenly his friend pulls up and asks him to open the trunk and help him get all this packed up. His buddy looks at him like, what the hell, and he says, please, just help me load up, I'll explain in the car. I was thinking about all this as I woke the next day, sprawled out on my living room floor, surrounded by about 20 or so bottles of whiskey and vodka, still shivering in my coat that I hadn't taken off before I passed out last night. As all of it came flooding back into my pickled brain, I remembered the owner's son telling me as we clink shot glasses that, we gotta party more often, cowboy, let me write down my number and we'll do this again, man. I reached into the pocket of my jeans and fished out his number, and after a moment to make sure I wasn't going to throw up, I found my phone and called him. He picked up after a few rings and he croaked a cracked hello that sounded as rough as I felt. I launched into my apology, admitting that I just woke up on the floor of my apartment and realized I'd stolen their entire bar. But he stopped me and said, oh man, don't even sweat it, please, keep it all. We've been laughing about this ever since we left last night. It's the funniest thing we've ever seen. We're just glad you're okay. We hated to leave you in the snow, but we saw your ride pulled up, so we knew you were going to be okay. Dude, that was the best company party ever, but next year I'm making the drinks. Yours were way too strong. Story 25. I worked for a large daycare company in a popular Texas city. They had a huge dinner and holiday party at a hotel, free drinks and DJ and dancing, and a huge roast beef for some reason. It was a daycare, so the employee attendees were probably 95% females. Leadership gets on stage and says they're going to have a drawing. They draw names and hang out gift certificates, then high-dollar prizes, culminating in an all-expenses-paid trip to an exotic location, I think Hawaii. The crowd is already thoroughly hammered. Every freaking prize went to upper management. At the end, you could not hear who was getting what between the announcements of names because there were hundreds of women either booing or screaming things like, "Screw you, you suck." It was so disturbing but glorious at the same time. My date and I ducked out when they called the Hawaii trip because things were getting so out of hand. Story 26. Party was at the office, but the big boss was not there. A photo of my wife and another woman laughing and dancing on his big tooled leather desktop reached the big boss a few days later. A few days after that, my wife and the other dancing women got a copy of an invoice for a huge amount marked "Please remit 50%" to replace the leather of the desktop, but also to reupholster the desk chair because, of course, it had a match. Like $3,000 total, and in 1990. The immediate boss stood up to the big boss, and in fact, the leather never did get replaced. Nasty document to get from your employer at Christmas, though. Story 27. I worked for years for a very big international travel agency that was known for its boozing. One Xmas party, we got flown to this exclusive high-rise in Thailand, and the guys got so intoxicated. They had a mini-bar fridge throwing competition. They went to each of their rooms, ripped the mini-bar out, and then measured how far into the pool they could throw them. When no clear winner was found, they did it with the occasional tears until the staff finally called the police. The company had to pay for all the new mini-bars and some broken sliding doors on the patio and the chairs, and to have the pool properly cleaned. You'd think that this would result in a lot of firings, but these managers just got legendary status at the company. It was that kind of place. I once got written up for not drinking 3 cowboys in a row because I was driving. I was told I was not a team player as I had won 3 awards and should be showing my staff how to celebrate. Story 28. Shopping mall Christmas party. They held it at the beginning of December so people could blow off steam before the big rush. Center management, selected facility staff, store owners, and shop staff. It was a big deal. 300-odd people wearing formal gear in a large convention room with free beer and wine. One of the security guys brought in a handful of beer pongs designed for slamming wine bottles and left them on certain tables. Pills are also passed around. He and a few others retired to the smoking balcony to enjoy some cigars. Perhaps due to the alcohol, maybe a certain incident in the Oval Office led to thoughts. So many of the ladies present decided they wanted to try a taste of the various cigars, with a lot showing unique smoking techniques. A couple of the ladies decided to have a competition to decide who was better at performing. Some of the festivities moved inside, with the dance floor becoming the epicenter of debauchery with fooling around. A lot of the older and senior guests packed up and left very quickly. Things went a bit more mental as people were slamming the bottles of wine between dances. Eventually, the venue moved everyone out, which spread the fun across a few other venues. A few people arrested, some hospitalized from fights or inebriation, and a couple of tense relationship issues finished the night off nicely. The instigator, arriving at work the next day with no hangover and laughing about the storm he created. As for the rest of us, the venue banned them all from having any more functions there, which was not a problem because Christmas parties were banned by the parent organization from then on. Story 29. I was a wedding/event DJ during my senior year of high school, was assigned to work a corporate party for a sporting goods company everyone would recognize the name of. This was for their corporate headquarters, so all their highest ranking execs were there. One of their SVPs got super intoxicated and requested the song Mustang Sally. This was during the CD era, so I told her no. I literally did not have that song in my collection that evening. She somehow took my polite, "I'm sorry, I don't have it with me. Is there anything else you'd like to hear?" as a personal screw you and your taste in music. She came around into the DJ booth, tried to slap me, but stumbled and almost knocked over my equipment. I was a 17-year-old kid and completely out of my depth. The CEO of the company was notified about what happened and came over to talk to me. He took me for a walk outside to cool down, and I realized years later, as an adult, convinced me not to call the cops or tell my boss. I was tipped $20 at the end of the night by a multi-million-dollar company whose employee mistreated me. It's been 30 years and I still won't buy their products. Story 30. Some chick got super hammered at the open bar and wandered off. No one noticed until a few hours later some random dude walked into the bar, fireman carrying the missing chick who had wandered outside and slipped on ice, knocking herself out into a snowbank wearing only a skirt and blouse on a sub-zero night. She was found with severe cold exposure, including hypothermia and frostbite. She was rushed to the hospital. This was all great because it distracted from me not showing up to work the next day because I was in the intoxicated tank. LOL. Story 31. Electronics manufacturer company Christmas party was in an old manor home converted for events, open bar, food. With a live jazz band, DJ, and a dance floor, the company, 300 people, hired lots of young, attractive immigrant girls that worked the assembly line, mostly from India and the Philippines, so they worked cheaper than a domestic worker. After the party got started, the girls rapidly became intoxicated, dancing and staggering about in evening gowns. The lead singer in the band was keeping busy cruising around, picking up a different girl on the breaks between each set, and having loud intimacy with each behind the stage curtain. Finally, the DJ got fed up, drawing the curtain back, exposing the lead singer and one of our Indian girls in a very compromised position. Immediately, the band left in a hurry without missing a beat. The DJ took over, finishing the night. Our assembler that got caught was so embarrassed she switched departments to a different building within a week. Story 32. It was a great Christmas party. The manufacturing director was having a wonderful time. I ran into him at the party and he introduced me to his date, the company's HR director. I then mentioned that his wife was somewhere around but he didn't know where. He was a little tipsy, but he didn't seem too bad yet. He kept at it throughout the night. Eventually, his wife found out and left him right there with her. She told him she was taking the kids and moving back to the UK. This was in California. It was a big screw-up. What happened next was unbelievable. He had just signed a lease on a super expensive house, so he had to pay an exorbitant amount to get out of it. Repeat that with his super expensive car. He ended up quitting his job and moving back to the UK to follow his wife. On top of all the money he lost on the house, the car, the furniture, his high salary, and the moving expenses, he also gave up his stock in the company when he left. The company just announced we're going to IPO. Considering how much I'll be making from the IPO, I would be shocked if that incident cost him less than $250 million. Story 33. When I worked there in the 1980s, the U.S. Department of Commerce Budget Office had an in-office open house Christmas party every year. The party was always held on the night of the lighting of the National Christmas tree on the Ellipse, which is right outside our 5th floor windows. Over 4 hours, well over 1,000 people would come and go. The invite list included every political or career staffer who was any way involved with accounting, financials, congressional reporting, budgeting, or appropriations for the department. Attendees ranged from the Secretary of Commerce down to the lowest unpaid appropriation committee intern. No government funds were spent on this. It was held after hours and all food and drink were supplied by the attendees. There was an open bar and enough food to feed a small army. The NOAA fistfight one year, my boss and I had to stop a fistfight between the head of NOAA and his boss, the deputy secretary. He was an intoxicated, insane 65-year-old career scientist. She was an intoxicated, insane 50-year-old woman who had worked on Wall Street. They were also having an affair. The Martini Vault, the following year with a different deputy secretary, this time a 65-year-old retired former CEO of a major U.S. company. Things took another turn. He got so intoxicated he attempted to vault the bar, which was actually a conference table, yelling that the volunteer employee bartender couldn't make a decent martini. It was obvious he considered himself an expert, as the bartender had served him at least 6 of them over the previous 2 hours. His adventure earned him a trip to GW Hospital. Story 34. The party was at a hotel about an hour away from where we work, so most stayed overnight. After the party, my coworker and I went to explore the hotel, an old classic place. As we were heading back to our room, we hear someone yelling and banging on a door. We hide on the stairs to watch the shenanigans. The sister of our secretary is banging on the door to be let in. People start coming out of their rooms to tell her to be quiet. She gets sassy with a man who doesn't work with us. Next thing I know, she claims he hit her. She is laying on the floor, screaming that he hit her, and she's suffering. Sister still doesn't open the door, by the way. Police come, we fill out a police report as witnesses. The boss shows up in pajamas. We get called to the office the next Monday to give a report. Story 35. I guess it all started when my boss got dumped by his girlfriend on the day of our Christmas party. He tried to cancel the entire thing because he was so depressed, so some of the guys and I decided to treat him to dinner at Benihana to cheer him up. And that's where things started getting a little crazy. My boss and one of my coworkers started drinking and hit it off with a couple of the waitresses. They actually invited them back to our office party. My boss ended up not being able to tell the 2 women apart, so he eventually marked one of them with a Sharpie so he could keep track. He also gave one of them a bicycle that was meant to be a donation for children's charity. Anyway, the waitresses eventually left and my boss got all upset again. Meanwhile, the office had decided to throw 2 rival Christmas parties, a Nutcracker Christmas and a Margarita Karaoke Christmas. People started choosing sides, and the short lady who runs our party planning committee even tried to sabotage the karaoke party by stealing the power cord to the machine. Eventually, both parties converged. The craziest part was that at the end of the night, my boss, who was still rebounding and depressed, dialed up his boss on the phone and invited her on an all-exclusive vacation to Jamaica. And believe it or not, we were shocked to find out later that she actually agreed to go. My boss then later accidentally emailed an intimate photo of her from that trip to the entire company. It was absolute insanity. And if any of these stories got to you, well, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.